It's not true, really, but it's quite fun watching people's reactions.
So if you're in a crowd, you need to be aware that you're all watching to see what the reaction is.
The people in the cars behind have a great time.
Recent whispers have been echoing through the cold corridors of Buckingham Palace, sparked by a brief but haunting remark from Prince Edward, the most reserved and tight-lipped member of the British royal family. As he left a private event at Windsor, Edward suddenly paused, turned to a close aide and said in a chilling tone, "I tried to warn her." Seconds later, he stepped into his car and drove off, leaving behind a stunned silence. Yet that fleeting moment was enough to send the British media into a frenzy. Tabloids immediately launched large-scale investigations to uncover the identity of the mysterious woman Prince Edward was referring to. What has unsettled royal watchers even more is the widespread belief among palace insiders that Edward has never uttered a single unnecessary word in public. If he truly made that warning, it almost certainly points to a grave secret that has been carefully guarded for years within the House of Windsor. One explosive theory suggests Edward has long foreseen the downfall of Harry and Meghan, but was powerless to prevent it. Meanwhile, even more dangerous rumors claim the comment is linked to a silent power struggle between Camilla and Sophie behind the palace walls. So what exactly does Prince Edward know that the entire royal family has tried so hard to keep hidden? And who is the woman at the center of this bombshell warning that has shaken Britain? Prince Edward, the youngest son of the late Queen Elizabeth II, and Prince Philip had always moved through life like a silent shadow. He grew up during one of the most turbulent periods in the history of the British monarchy, yet unlike his siblings, he chose a path of quiet restraint and seclusion. While the tabloids feasted on the tumultuous love affairs, messy divorces, and public scandals of Prince Charles, Prince Andrew, and Princess Anne throughout the 1990s, Edward meticulously built his own private world, far from the flashing cameras and relentless gossip. He was the only one among the siblings who did not pursue a long-term military career, instead venturing briefly into theater and television production, a decision that drew considerable skepticism from the aristocracy at the time before returning with full commitment to serve the crown. Edward's calm demeanor and unwavering loyalty to royal duty had been forged over decades spent living in the shadow of his more powerful and outspoken siblings. His aversion to the spotlight made him a safe, steady presence, a rare pocket of silence in a family constantly rocked by media crises. This middle-aged man, with a high forehead, gentle smile, and eyes that always seemed to observe more than they revealed, had dedicated himself through low-key official tours, quiet charity work, and a stable marriage since 1999 to Sophie Rhys-Jones, who later became the Countess of Wessex. In a Windsor family rife with ambition and controversy, Edward was like a foundation, brick plain, rarely noticed, yet remarkably solid. However, the tranquil atmosphere surrounding the Queen's youngest son was shattered one dusky afternoon, right after an official diplomatic event at Buckingham Palace. It was a time when international media was already boiling over with reports of irreparable rifts within the royal family, fueled by accusations and one-sided interviews that appeared almost daily. As he prepared to step into his car to return to Bagshot Park, standing beside a few trusted aides and a veteran journalist with long-standing ties to the palace, Edward suddenly paused. His gaze drifted across the paved courtyard, where fine droplets of rain had begun to cling to the matte black windows of the vehicle. He let out a soft sigh, heavy with long suppressed helplessness. His lips pressed together for a moment before he spoke in a low, even voice that was clear enough to make those around him freeze. "I tried to warn her." The words slipped out as lightly as a breath, without naming anyone or offering any further explanation. Immediately afterward, Edward adjusted his suit collar, stepped quickly into the car, and left behind a stunned silence among the witnesses. This small but rare outburst from a prince known for his extreme discretion immediately triggered a powerful undercurrent. The vague yet loaded remark acted like a spark thrown onto dry tinder, igniting the British on international media. Royal observers and behavioral experts began dissecting every tone, every blink from that moment. Behind the face, he always kept carefully composed people, sensed an astonishing depth of pent-up emotion. What was the warning about? When had it been given? In which closed room within the palace? And most importantly, who was her, the mysterious woman who occupied the mind of this usually unflappable man? Public curiosity went far beyond a single impulsive comment. It opened a Pandora's box of tangled relationships and silent fractures hidden behind the walls of Windsor. Edward, who had spent his life avoiding sensational headlines, now found himself unwittingly thrust into the center of a new storm of speculation, where every past glance and gesture was being re-examined for the faintest clue. Public opinion immediately turned the media microscope toward the most turbulent figure in the royal family, in recent years, Meghan Markle. People began revisiting every event, every piece of footage, from the moment the Duchess of Sussex entered the family, searching for even the smallest exchanged glance or gesture between her and Prince Edward. In the memory of royal observers, Edward had always maintained a measured distance, a defensive silence in the face of the intense spotlight and frenzy the media directed at Harry and Meghan's relationship. When the first cracks appeared around 2019, Edward was said to have foreseen the tragic outcome that was slowly taking shape, an independent American spirit struggling inside the suffocating glass cage of rigid royal protocol. Edward's empathy and perspective on Meghan's situation were not without foundation. He and his wife, Sophie, had tasted bitterness in their early marriage while trying to reconcile personal passions with royal duty. That was why his feelings toward the crisis, known as Megxit, were a complex mix understanding for the suffocating pressure under the glare of the spotlight, yet profound disappointment at the impulsive way his nephew and his wife had handled it. Deep down, Edward had always placed the integrity of the crown above all else, and Harry and Meghan's decision to abandon their duties and leave in 2020 felt like a direct cut to the loyalty he had upheld his entire life. In the rare instances when he faced probing questions from the press about the scandalous departure, Edward never turned away or showed open anger. His demeanor always carried a calm sorrow. He would often clasp his hands tightly together, his thumb gently rubbing the back of the other hand, an unconscious habit that revealed the tension he was working so hard to control. When forced to comment, he would only say it was very sad in a low, drawn-out tone. His eyes would usually drop to the floor, as if trying to hide his weariness at seeing family matters turned into a public spectacle. For Edward, the complexity of a family that was both a public institution and a private home was something outsiders could never fully understand. Behind the velvet curtains of the palace, rumors circulated that Edward had once had a private conversation with Meghan. He had tried as someone with more experience to offer her sincere advice. It may have been a late afternoon at Frogmore Cottage, where he appeared quietly attempting to serve as a bridge between two generations and two vastly different worldviews. He had tried to explain to Meghan that the crown was not only about glory, but about service, about accepting the need to diminish one's ego for a greater purpose. Her silence, the proud tilt of her chin, or the distant smile she wore during the final royal engagements in early 2020 may have been the answer that made Edward realize all his efforts had failed completely. The whirlwind of speculation continued to push public curiosity to an extreme. If the warning Edward uttered in the previous chapter was truly directed at Meghan, was it a warning about the destructive power of the British media machine, or about the utter loneliness that comes when one dares to challenge the conservative forces within the palace? Edward's firm refusal to issue any clarification only made the psychological picture even more intriguing. As the theories surrounding Meghan Markle gradually subsided, a more subtle and profound wave of speculation began to seep through the corridors of Buckingham Palace. The eyes of those in the know turned away from across the ocean and back toward the very heart of royal power, focusing directly on another powerful woman, Queen Camilla. Observers started revisiting the tense pages of memory from years past when the palace power structure had undergone fierce, unspoken shifts. Many now believed that Prince Edward's bitter warning was not meant for an outsider who had come and gone, but for his own sister-in-law, or a painful conclusion offered to Sophie, his steadfast wife, whom he had always quietly protected. For a long time, the relationships among the royal women had never been a still lake. Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, with her middle-class background, elegant demeanor, natural grace, and especially the absolute favor she once received from Queen Elizabeth II, had unintentionally become a thorn in the side of Camilla's allies. Edward's mindset during this period remained in a state of constant quiet alert. He watched as his wife was placed in awkward situations, overshadowed in diplomatic ceremonies, or subjected to cold isolation amid the shifting power dynamics inside the palace. Every time he saw Sophie force a smile for the cameras, while her hands trembled slightly as they gripped her small handbag, a wave of restrained indignation would rise within Edward, held back beneath the polished exterior of a dutiful prince. The tension reached its peak during grand state banquets, where seating arrangements and the display of precious tiaras became clear measures of status. Edward would often position himself half a step behind Sophie, an act that was both deferential and an invisible shield, protecting her from Camilla's sharp, probing gazes. When Camilla's eyes swept over them, a piercing look carrying the authority of a woman preparing to become Queen Edward would narrow his own slightly, his hand gently resting on his wife's waist in a light, reassuring squeeze that silently said he was there, standing with her through every pressure she endured. Edward's emotions were a blend of a husband's pride and a prince's helplessness under the strict hierarchy. He knew he could not openly confront the future queen, but he also refused to let anyone trample on the dignity of his small family. Their wordless dialogues through clasped hands and subtle nods during royal events became their only weapons to survive the hidden image purges. If the warning existed, it was Edward's belated act of resistance, an acknowledgement of just how cruel and psychologically corrosive this internal royal power struggle truly was. Despite the invisible pressures from Camilla's circle, Edward chose a wise strategy, patience, and unshakable loyalty. He refused to rebel or expose others' flaws like some other family members. Instead, he and Sophie quietly endured, steadily earning trust from the Queen and the public through pure dedication. Their discreet footsteps through the palace corridors, separate from the web of power schemes, gradually turned them into an oasis of calm. Edward's silent endurance amid the internal storms was the strongest possible response proof of a resilient character, forged from self-respect and profound love for his life partner. Time passed, and the relentless wheels of history, along with the harsh laws of life, began creating irreplaceable voids within the House of Windsor. The major turning point came with the passing of Prince Philip, followed by Prince Andrew's humiliating withdrawal from public life after his shocking scandals, and culminating in the death of Queen Elizabeth II. The British royal family faced an unprecedented image crisis as its towering pillars fell one by one, leaving a gaping hole in both personnel and public trust. It was during this storm that Prince Edward and his wife, Sophie, long accustomed to standing on the edge of the spotlight, suddenly found themselves pushed to the forefront of royal duty. Edward's mindset at the time was one of deep contemplation and acute awareness of the burden placed upon him by circumstance. He looked at the empty chairs in council meetings, at the overloaded schedule of royal engagements left unattended, and understood that he no longer had the luxury of remaining in the shadows. His actions began to shift, taking on a more urgent and decisive rhythm. People noticed Edward appearing more frequently at major national events, from solemn memorial ceremonies to complex diplomatic tours. Each step he took was no longer that of a relaxed youngest son, but carried the steadiness and dignity inherited from his late father. This transformation showed clearly in the small details of Edward's behavior. During busy ceremonies, his face no longer carried the melancholic, probing expression of previous years. Instead, it reflected intense focus, a determined gaze that still retained warmth and approachability. When facing crowds of people bewildered by the family's upheavals, Edward would often step forward, proactively leaning in slightly to listen, a patient and sincere gesture he had learned from his mother. His hands, which once clasped tightly to suppress emotion, now opened freely to shake hands and offer reassuring pats on the shoulder to aides and citizens alike. Beside him, Sophie also shone with newfound confidence, becoming a solid pillar of support as she shared the heavy responsibilities history had entrusted to them. In response to this remarkable evolution, the British public and media completely changed their perception of the Queen's youngest son. No longer was he seen as a faded or excessively reserved prince. Instead, newspapers and observers began describing him as the silent pillar. People realized that while other family members were preoccupied with their personal media battles, it was Edward and Sophie who quietly kept the royal ship from capsizing in the tempest. Their consistent scandal-free presence became a calming force, helping to restore the image of a dedicated, exemplary, and trustworthy royal family in the eyes of the modern public. In Edward's heart, stepping into the light was never about seeking praise or competing for influence with his elder brother, King Charles III. For him, it was simply the fulfillment of a solemn promise to his family and to his parents. Each time he donned his formal royal attire, before stepping onto the stage, Edward would stand before the mirror, adjusting his medals, his fingers gently touching the commemorative medal of his father, as he took a deep breath to steady himself. He knew that every action, every smile, and every nod no longer belonged to him alone. They represented the survival and dignity of an entire monarchy, striving to heal its wounds. Spring of 2023 brought a profoundly symbolic transition in Prince Edward's life. In the Grand Hall of Buckingham Palace, under the gaze of the new royal court, King Charles III officially signed the decree, granting his youngest brother the title of Duke of Edinburgh. This was far more than a prestigious noble rank. It was the passing of the greatest legacy of Prince Philip, the man who had carried the title for over 70 years and turned it into a symbol of service, courage, and iron discipline. For Edward, the moment he received this title was an explosion of inner emotion, a collision between overwhelming pride and a surge of feeling so intense it threatened to crack his usual calm exterior. As he stepped forward to accept the decree from his brother, Edward kept his back straight, but those standing close could detect a brief flicker in his eyes. His chest rose and fell with deep breaths as he fought back a tear when his father's name was solemnly invoked. His bow of gratitude carried absolute reverence. He accepted the document with both hands, his fingertips gently tracing the leather as though touching the memories and strict yet compassionate teachings of Prince Philip from years past. This was the well-deserved reward for more than 2 decades of quiet dedication and official acknowledgement from the king that Edward was the only one worthy of carrying on his father's spirit. The title ceremony immediately elevated Prince Edward to a new level on the international media stage. The flashbulbs of major news outlets once again surrounded him, but this time not to scrutinize rumors, but to admire the new Duke of Edinburgh. During his first official tours with the new title, observers noted a subtle change in Edward's demeanor. He wore his classically tailored suits with quiet confidence, the Duke of Edinburgh insignia gleaming on his chest like an unshakable affirmation of his position. Though busier than ever, with a packed schedule of diplomatic engagements, Edward never showed signs of fatigue. On the contrary, his spirit seemed fueled by a powerful sense of responsibility toward his father's legacy. Beside him, Sophie now appeared as the Duchess of Edinburgh, a title once held by Queen Elizabeth II herself when she was still a princess. This historical coincidence further deepened public respect for the couple. Edward often watched his wife move among international dignitaries with eyes full of pride and gratitude. Only after a long, demanding ceremony, when the doors of the royal car closed and shut out the cheering crowds, would Edward allow his shoulders to relax. He would lean his head against the seat, take Sophie's hand, and though they didn't need to look at each other, the firm grip of their fingers spoke volumes about this new chapter. One filled with glory, but also heavy pressure. The new title did not change Edward's inherently modest nature, yet it gave him a stronger, more independent stance amid the palace's internal storms. Now, when standing in family meetings or court ceremonies, the man once considered reserved and unremarkable possessed a voice of significant weight. The cryptic remark, "I tried to warn her from the past," was now viewed through a different lens. It was not the complaint of an outsider, but the profound reflection of a man who had come to understand the true nature of power and duty, someone who had weathered the storms with patience and finally stood in the position he most deserved within the House of Windsor. When the bright lights of grand ceremonies faded and the peaceful darkness settled over Bagshot Park, Prince Edward could finally return to his truest self. In a Windsor family constantly rocked by broken marriages and public feuds played out in the media, Edward and Sophie's home stood like a surreal pocket of calm. After more than 25 years together, their bond had not been kindled by grand romantic vows, but forged through the small, everyday details of life. A synchronized touch of hands while strolling through the rose-filled garden, or a shared glance of understanding after hours of maintaining composure in front of the public. When with his wife, Edward's mind was in complete relaxation. He did not need to play the role of a dignified duke. He could simply be a man who had found a safe harbor after life's storms. The couple's enduring stability was clearly reflected in how they faced and overcame major life challenges together. From the suffocating media pressure in their early marriage years to Sophie's serious health issues in the past and the grief of losing their parents, they met everything with patience and courage. Edward's actions always carried a subtle sense of protection. Whenever he sat at his desk, sorting through condolence letters or a packed schedule of engagements, he had the habit of sliding a warm cup of tea toward his wife, his fingers gently brushing her hair, as a quiet affirmation of their inseparable companionship. They had turned the royal family's crises into glue that strengthened their relationship, making it a model of loyalty in the eyes of the British people. This steadfast philosophy was also applied thoroughly by Edward and Sophie in raising their two children, Lady Louise and James Earl of Wessex. In stark contrast to royal tradition, which usually emphasized titles and privileges from birth, the couple deliberately chose a simple, down-to-earth upbringing for their children. Having witnessed the tragedies his siblings endured due to early royal pressure, Edward made firm decisions as a father. He did not require his children to use the titles prince or princess upon reaching adulthood, but instead encouraged them to be independent, focus on their studies, and discover their own values. Everyday scenes at Bagshot Park clearly reflected this choice. People could catch glimpses of Edward personally driving the family car to take the children to school or working alongside his daughter Louise to care for the horses on the farm without a large entourage. The children's behavior, from Lady Louise's modest part-time job at a garden center during holidays to James's quiet politeness at public events was a genuine reflection of their parents' unpretentious lifestyle. Edward watched his children grow up healthy and mentally balanced with quiet pride. He understood that the greatest gift he could leave the next generation was not lavish titles, but free spirits and lives uncrushed by the golden cage of the media. Amid a modern royal family struggling to redefine itself after numerous fractures, the Duke of Edinburgh's family stood as a symbol of the most stable, discreet, and scandal-free household. Over time, that cryptic remark seemed to have found its fullest answer in Edward's own life. It was not only a warning about the traps of royal power, but also a quiet affirmation of the path he had chosen, one of restraint, loyalty, and placing family at the foundation. After finishing the story, what do you think was Prince Edward's mysterious warning truly aimed at Meghan Markle's explosive rebellion against the strict royal rules? Or was it a painful reflection on the hidden pressures from Queen Camilla toward his own small family? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.